Welcome, everybody, to the Retail Corner podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Ryan Moser. He's the Senior Director of Inventory Strategy and Pricing Science at ThredUp. And if you guys are not familiar with ThredUp, ThredUp is actually a second-hand online retail e-commerce shop, right? And Ryan, I'll let you speak a little bit more about it, right? But obviously, as the Senior Director of Inventory Strategy and Pricing Science with ThredUp, what does that entail, right? What's the background? What's your day-to-day operations look like?
Yeah, so I've been with ThredUp for 10 years. So I joined in 2013 when it was just found like product market fit and was just starting to take off. And and the fact that I've been here 10 years is like relevant to the job. So I've worked in a number of roles. I started on the ops side of the business, and like now pricing is on the product side of the business. But it's important that I've been here for a while because I've had a chance to see a broad see the business broadly, and like this is a role that touches a lot of parts of that touches a lot of parts of the business. So I transitioned from the engineering side to the product side about 3 years ago, and and I was doing deep learning at the time that I was on the engineering side, so a lot of opportunities in the pricing side, and that's the reason that I cut over to start working on pricing. And as far as like what the job entails, so a lot of it is ThredUp is a managed marketplace, right? So we're managing supply on one side, like suppliers sending us bags, and then managing demand on the other side. So like core responsibility to the job is like balancing supply and demand. What products do we want to list? At what price do we want to list? How do we mark them down? And then when we're running sales, like which inventory do we include in the sales, at like what level of discount? And then that also ties into revenue. So you can imagine it touches a lot of teams, like ops, volume of listing, the FP&A, like how do we forecast the coming quarter? Like that is what the role entails.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I'm sure, obviously, you guys are using some of the data that you have in order to analyze and know what you need to replenish, right, on one hand. But when you're thinking of bringing new product, right, new product in, how do you make your analysis, or how do you guys base it to know, hey, maybe we need more chino pants, or maybe we need more tops, or whatever the case might be? What goes into that?
Yeah, so one of the reasons this business is so tricky is because the bags come from people. So instead of ordering, you think if you're a retailer, you're ordering from a factory. These are just people sending us bags of clothing. So we don't have direct control over what we list. So we can't say, for example, like we need 10 more pairs of Gap pants next week, or 1,000 more pairs, or 10,000 more pairs. So like a big trick to making this run smoothly, or understanding supply and demand, is like, how do we group the products? It's like we've listed like 170 million SKUs since the time I joined. So the question is like, how do you make sense out of that stuff? Mm-hmm. And it's really like how to group those products, and it's grouping them in a way that makes sense to the way customers actually shop, right? So if you're thinking about like, how do I avoid stockouts, how I avoid getting way overstock, it's understanding how customers shop and trying to group what's coming in according to how people shop. And then you go up a level from there around people sending us bags. Like we don't have to accept every single item people send us. So like, what do we accept? What do we want to list? And then balancing supply and demand. Do we want prices to go up? Do we want prices to go down? So we're constantly like playing that game.
And so for people listening to us here, if somebody wants to send their clothing, right, what does that process look like for them? So that they're familiar, because I'm sure maybe a lot of people that are listening to us, they're not aware of it, right? And sometimes people want to donate clothes, sometimes they want to sell it. But what's the process for you guys, and for the people that are your suppliers, right? In essence.
Yes, you come onto ThredUp site, and then you can order a label. So we will provide you a label that you can affix to a box. So most people have a lot of boxes sitting around like orders. Yeah, just laying around. A lot of people have boxes. We've also done bags. You can also order a bag that we will send to you, and then once you order that bag, you send. You take some time to fill out the bag, or fill out a box, attach the label so shipping is paid, and then you send the box to us. And then ThredUp does all the work of sorting out that clothing. So we're scanning the label, we associate it with your account, and then we associate all the items in that box or that bag to you, as we do all the work of sorting and adding all the data, taking all the photos, putting those items away, selling them. Yeah.
To the correct consumer. And when you're going through that selling process, right? Two things, I guess. Like, how do you define what's the right pricing, right? Like, what studies, what data do you look at in order to define what's the best pricing for the products that you're putting out there for your consumers?
Yeah, Carlos, that's a great question, and that's really tricky because the marketplace is like single SKU, and like the name of the game here is comps. So like, what similar items have you seen? And the challenging part is making sense out of those comps.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned like grouping products earlier, and for a lot of we're at a scale where a lot of the things that we are listing, we have seen either an identical item before or a very similar item before. And in that case, it's pretty easy. But then there's a lot to compensate for. Like when we last saw it, was it in season? Was it out of season? Was it trending? Was it not trending? So you're playing this game of like, you're trying to use comps, the best comps you can find, but then how do you use other data, or like how recent were those comps? Like which comps are more relevant? Like what are the most relevant comps in this case? And then it really starts to get tricky where like, okay, I've got a black dress, and black dresses are trendy, but it's from a brand I've never seen. Like, how do I make sense out of that? And that's where, like that's where it starts to get really tricky. Where like, how do comps for that brand look? How do you combine that with comps for, let's say, black dresses to find the right price for that
Absolutely,
item?
absolutely. And I'm sure with that comes the other challenge, right? Which is maintaining adequate inventory, right? Of those products. And so, but so do you guys really face that as a problem, the inventory, or because you're getting whatever you're getting, once you're out, and you just keep going and you keep adjusting pricing for
Oh
new
no,
orders?
it's actually been a challenge, Carlos, and it's something we've had to learn a lot about over the years. So a lot of marketplace businesses are limited by supply, and
Mhm.
ThredUp has really not been that way because it's a really convenient service, right? Because like we do all the work. It's actually even more convenient than going to Goodwill because you don't even have to go to Goodwill. You just uh, you put your clothes in a box, put it on a porch, press a button, and like we'll send USPS to come pick up the box. So it's really easy. The part where there's been learning is getting the right supply in, and like that's where we've really made a lot of progress over, let's say, the past year. And a lot of that's, so the problem is not total volume of supply, it's like being selective. So like whom do we want to send in supply? So a lot of that is like creating the right incentives, and we started adding like a fee structure. So in the early days it was like a free-for-all that anybody could send in as much as they wanted. Didn't have to pay for a shipping label, like. And now we're a little bit more choosy around like who is sending us the things that we need, that like like types of items that are in demand right now. It's like you can start
Mhm.
with, because when people supply multiple times, you can get a sense of like, does the supply match demand, like, or do the people have a sense of style? Are they sending things that are on trend?
Yeah, because I'm sure it's the trend and also the quality, right, of the product, making sure that
Yes.
it's in good enough condition and everything, so that you can actually. And so for all of our listeners out there, when I send my bag of clothing to you guys, is it a donation basis, or do you guys purchase the clothing from me at a certain price level, or how does that aspect of
It,
it work?
it is. You can send in donation, but that's less common. It is mostly a consignment business model. So when
Oh,
your
okay.
clothing sells, we pay out, and that payout scales along with you could think of it as like price and with demand, right? Like clothing that is easier to come by, we pay out less. Clothing that's higher in demand, we pay out more,
Okay,
which is
okay.
another aspect of trying to balance the marketplace.
Of course, of course. And what strategies do you guys use in order to incentivize, right, the people that are working as your suppliers, right? Because I'm sure when you get some really good quality products, and they're in great condition and all those things, you guys probably flag those type of, right, of customers, right? Because they're in a way you're a customer, in order to try to re-engage them to say, hey, do you have any other merchandise or any other clothing you don't want or you already used, in order to have that. Is that an effort that goes into place?
Yes, I mean there are some considerations around like for which buyers do we want to like waive fees, or I mean there are different levels you can do this, right? Like you can market to suppliers, you can waive fees for suppliers, you can just send them an email and just ask them for more more things, right? So like there are various levels at which we can function here.
Okay. Nice. And so the other thing I wanted to ask you, right, as you guys are growing and developing the business and everything, so have you had any instances, right? Do you guys ship your merchandise globally, or is it all just within the US?
We have done global shipping, so it's primarily US based business. Most of our orders go to the US, but we have shipped globally before.
And you know, another question that comes to mind is if you could share an example of maybe a challenging, right, supply management situation or a story. There's always stories, right, as we go through all these different
Yes.
projects and adventures as we're working, that you were able to obviously you encountered and how you were able to resolve it.
All right. So early days of COVID. So we have a lot of metrics that we monitor. The early days of COVID, we saw the average listing price of inventory on ThredUp start to skyrocket. And at the same time, inventory started selling slower than it had ever sold. And we were trying to figure out like what is going on here. And a certain group of sellers had realized that there was essentially like a loophole in our system where one thing we allow suppliers to do is to change prices. So like we normally set prices, we give them the freedom to change prices. And there was also a mechanism to ask for your clothing back if it doesn't sell, because normally if it's consignment, if it doesn't sell, ThredUp just keeps it, keeps the clothing. But there was an option to get the clothing back.
Mm-hmm.
So a group of suppliers realized that ThredUp could essentially be free storage for them, where they could send in items, mark the price way up, and just get the clothing back and send it right back to us to be relisted, because they didn't care how long it took to sell, because they realized that there was a way to game the system to use this as free storage. And people were actually selling courses on social media, I think for like thousands of dollars, that were like how to game ThredUp.
On how to do this.
Yeah, how to do this. So
Wow.
it's pretty funny looking back. It was not funny. But it was definitely not funny at the time that it was happening.
Of course, I can imagine.
Right. So, and that's just one of those things that you learn that we just had to learn as we go. It's like, so like the incentives were not obvious. That there was this like interlocking set of things you could do to game ThredUp system. So that was one of the first moments where we thought, okay, like ThredUp supply service is not for everybody. But like we have a certain set of people we're trying to serve, and like the people who are doing this, we're trying to make as much money as they possibly could selling their clothing. And ThredUp's just the wrong place for that. Like we're super convenient, and like that is our bread and butter for suppliers. And it's not people who want to absolutely maximize the dollars they make. Like that might be eBay, it might be Poshmark, it might be somebody else. And like that's okay. Like being a great business is as much about deciding what you don't do as what you do. So that was one of the first moments where we thought, these are the wrong suppliers for us, and we just want to be honest about that. Like this is what our service accomplishes, and this was what it does not accomplish. So we changed some of our terms and actually changed how we talk to that group of people.
No, that's phenomenal. And I was talking to a group of guys on the previous episode, right? And one of the things we were talking about is exactly what you just said: is it's okay to say no. It's important to know how to say no, right? And to recognize which customers are your type of customers, your target audience, right? And which suppliers are not, or which vendors, or whatever the case might be, because you cannot cater to everybody. And if you try to become the business that caters to everybody, you will only put yourself in a position of failure, you know?
Yes.
So
if you try to if you try to serve everybody, you serve nobody.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
No, that's a phenomenal story. Wow, that's. I bet that was very stressful and very challenging, but you guys came out on the other side stronger, and that's what it's all about, right?
As you said, it was extremely stressful, but we absolutely came out better on the other side for it.
That's awesome. And the last question I wanted to ask you, is if you had one piece of advice out there that to recommend to all the people that listen to us, as they're growing into their careers, as they're developing, what would be the one piece of advice that you've learned that you think has really made a difference in your path in succeeding and, of course, getting above and above in levels within the organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because ThredUp's 2023 crop of interns are here, and this is their last week, and a lot of those interns have been asking me that same question. They've been asking me that same question. Like, I'm starting out, like, what do I do with my career? Like, how do I think about going from here? And it seems like a lot of the nervous energy is coming from getting started out on like the right path. Like, how do I choose the right thing? And the advice I've been giving them is careers are not linear. Like a job is not forever. It's an opportunity to learn about what sort of work you like what motivates you, what people you want to work around, like what mission can you get behind. And like I'm in like the fourth act of my career. Like I was doing like satellite command and control early. I was doing management consulting for the governments. Like I've got a huge breadth of
Wow.
my career. I've been all over the place, and like all those different experiences have massively benefited the next experience that I've done. So my advice is like, don't be afraid to try something, and it's always a two-way door, and you might find the perfect thing for you, and it might take a few tries, but it doesn't mean you start over. Like it's a pivot. It's not starting over.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and you're absolutely right, right? And for everybody out there listening, he's absolutely right. Like start anywhere, right? Anywhere the opportunity seems good, anywhere where you have a good potential of growing and mentorship, and like he said, right, you'll consistently pivot. I think I have not met one executive that shifted drastically, right? Especially from the beginning of their careers as they went into higher levels within, senior directors and so forth.
Yeah,
But all of those experiences only nourish your ability to be better at that new opportunity.
absolutely. Couldn't have said it
Yeah.
better.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for spending some time with us. Thank you for sharing. Everybody out there, I have some clothing that now I want to send you guys. Yeah, because you recycle it and you turn it and everything, and after a certain point, you want to buy new clothes and have a different wardrobe and all that. So take advantage of the opportunity. Take advantage of ThredUp. Utilize it and help yourself and help them, and enjoy the cycle of fashion and retail. It was a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you so much for talking to me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Carlos.
Likewise. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Retail Corner podcast. We'll see you guys in our next episode. Stay tuned in. Thank you so much. If you would like to be featured on our podcast, please email us at podcast@retailcorner.live or visit our website, retailcorner.live. Looking forward to having you as our guest on our podcast, and thank you so much for listening.